And I'm going to start off first of all by looking at the verse of which I really want us to focus on today. So feel free, if you've got the Bible app or if you have the physical Bible, you can read it. And the verse that we're going to be focusing on today is from Genesis 14, specifically verses 22 to 24, which says, "But Abram said to," by the way, if you can't find Genesis, I'm very worried, okay? Because it's the first book of the Bible, okay? Please get that. Let's get it. It's not near Matthew. It's not near Revelation, the first book, okay? So Genesis 14, verse 22. "But Abram said to the king of Sodom, with raised hand I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich." Verse 24, "I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten and the share that belongs to the men who went with me to Anna, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share." So I was reading the NIV version, and that's when the topic of today came. And the topic is, sacrifice is saying no to what looks good, but may not be of God. I'll say that one more time. Sacrifice is saying no to what looks good, but may not be of God. And just to kind of give you a bit of context about this whole story with Abram. So we've obviously gone through the book of Genesis right now. We started from the beginning of creation, the beginning of the world where, you know, the world that was nothing, was formless, and God creates everything in 6 days and rests on the seventh. Then we go into a time where we have Adam and Eve, they eat of the apple, blah, 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 etc., etc. We then get to a time where now Noah is seen as the only righteous person on the earth because people were just acting too damn crazy for their own good. So God says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to destroy the whole earth with a great flood. He destroys it, and now along the line in the descendants comes Abram, who hasn't yet been named Abraham, but Abram comes along. And Abram is seen as an honorable man of God. You know, God tells him, he literally says, out of you will come, you know, descendants that will cover this earth. You will literally be the father of fathers. You are the forefather. Abram is our forefather. But then all of a sudden they go into this place of war. So there's a war between two groups of kings. There's a long list of them, believe me. If you start reading from about chapter 11 till about 14, you can read all about it. But there's basically a war that goes on between the kings. And it basically talks about the victory that Abram then had, okay? So there was a point where Abram and Lot is his nephew. And there comes to a point where Abram and Lot are standing there and they're basically saying, okay, we need to divide up this land that we have. We've conquered, but now it's time to divide. Lot decides that he wants to go towards the east. Abram decides to stay in the land of Canaan. This all happens in Genesis 13. Again, you can read it in your own time. So that all happens. The war now comes, and Lot and his entire family are taken away. They're captured. So Abram gets a message from one of the people that was able to come free. Gets a message to say, your nephew, the one who you gave land in another corner and you decided to go to another place, has been captured. Now, there's two types of people that I automatically think in this kind of situation. There's a type of people who will leave everything that they have and will go and help whoever it is. Or there's types of people that will turn their back and say, do you know what? Well, that's none of my business. That's not my problem. There are two types of things, or two scenarios, or two things that Abram could have done. Either he could have turned around and said, well, guess what? That's not my problem anymore. That's none of my business anymore. Me and Lot went our separate ways. We decided to go in different ways. Yes, he's my nephew. Yes, I love him. Yes, we are family. But guess what? Even family can burn you sometimes, right? I think we've all experienced that at some point in our lives. Where the people that we think are the closest to us, the people who should actually be the most important to us and should help us the most, are the people that actually leave us for dead.
It's a bit of a sticky one.
Just a tiny one. Just a tiny one. There's literally those people who, they might call themselves your friends, they might call themselves your family, but they're really not really ready and willing to ride out. They're really not the ones to say, listen, they will claim in one side and be like, listen, I'm ride or die. But then when it really does come down to it, they're not willing to ride or die. Now, one thing I love about this story is the fact that even though Abram and Lot had gone their separate ways, were building their own separate work and doing what they were doing in their own separate land, Abram decided that he was going to go and get his nephew. He decided that he was going to allow himself to be the term of ride or die in the right context. Not ride or die, i.e. I have a boyfriend that doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I don't, my boyfriend's great. But I'm just talking in general. You know, you have a partner or a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's acting like a complete fool, but you're going to ride or die for them. Where are you going and riding and dying to where, please? Please, tell me, remind me. To die? I don't want it. You're literally 100%. You're literally riding to basically die. But in this situation, in this context, this is where Abraham decides that, you know what, I'm going to ride or die for my family, but all in the right way. So he goes, he fights that battle, and he gets back everything that they once lost. He goes back, he saves his family, he gets lot back, his possessions, all of his things. He gets it all back. And then towards the end, from that verse 22, and we can go back to it as well. Then all of a sudden, the king of Sodom comes to him and says, okay, do you know what? I'm going to offer you something. I'm going to offer you something that most people would not be able to refuse. I'm going to offer you riches and all of these great things that you could have had, that could make you happier, that could sustain you, that could build you up, that could increase your territory, that could push you to be so much more. And Abraham says something that is so strange that you would never think that he would say. He turns around to him and he says, no. He again says, and I'm going to read it one more time. Abraham said to the king of Sodom, with raised hand, I have sworn an oath to the Lord. How many times do we swear oaths to God, but yet we still backtrack? How many times do we go about our lives where we'll swear something, we'll say, we swear, like, God, if you just get me out of this sticky situation, I swear to you, I'll never do it again. I swear to you, I'll never slip up like that again. I swear to you, Lord Jesus, please just get me out of this. And I swear to you, I will ensure I do not backtrack on what it is that I'm saying. We get it so many times where we allow ourselves to dishonor God even when he's honored us. And it's a really harsh reality sometimes to look to, and it's a harsh reality to allow ourselves to see, but it is the truth. But on this occasion, Abraham shows us how we should be dealing with these things. Now I'm going to show you a little bit later how Abraham in himself as well, and nobody is perfect. But Abraham takes the time to say, do you know what? I made an oath to God. I made an oath to God, and while this might glitter, this might be gold, this might be beautiful, I know that I promised the creator of heaven and earth that I would not accept anything that belonged to you. Not even, and he goes on to say, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abraham rich. And then this kind of got me thinking about a lot of us and a lot of the ways that we build and we develop ourselves and we develop whether it be our crafts, our businesses, whatever it is that we want to do. So many of us see opportunities. Maybe it's an investment. Maybe it's something that someone's offering you. Maybe it's someone saying, listen, let's team up as business partners. And because it might have been in that moment something that looked good, we fail first to consider God, to know if it was really from God. We make a decision, a snap decision in that moment, and we think, do you know what? It's absolutely fine. This is it. This is the breakthrough I've been looking for. But who told you that? This is what I've been waiting for. God knew that I was praying about finances. This is the perfect investor. But who said that? Maybe there was an investor that needed to come behind the investor you've seen. If only you had waited. If only you had taken the moment to sacrifice what you thought was right for what God had in mind for you. And Abraham is a clear example of that. Another example that we can even remember, if we again go back just a little bit further, in terms of seeing things that maybe looked good but weren't necessarily of God, is again right at the beginning with Adam and Eve. When Eve looked at that tree, she looked at that fruit, she saw something that was good. Yes, she had been pre-warned by God. Yes, God had already warned her and said, listen, you will surely die. If you eat from this tree, eat from anything else, but if you eat from this tree, you will surely die. But to her, it looked good. And so what did she do? She went, she picked it, and she ate from it. It looked good, but again, it wasn't from God. Another example is when King David saw Bathsheba in that pool, washing herself naked, just doing whatever she was doing, minding her business. When he saw her, as many men might do, okay? Maybe men, you guys can comment about, what you think about this. But as many men might do, you see a lovely lady and you think, wow, she's fine. There we go. She's fine. It looks good, but who told you that it's of God? Just because it looks good in that moment, just because it looks like it might be satisfactory, just because it looks like it might be something that might bless you in that moment, just because it looks like something that might quench the hunger, the thirst, whatever it is that you're experiencing right here, right now, does not mean that it is of God. It does not mean that actually in the future that is what will allow you to progress. It doesn't mean that actually in the future that is what will allow your family to progress. And sometimes we don't think about that, Sometimes we forget that what we do could affect generations to come. We walk in our own selves and we think that what I'm doing right now, the decisions that I make is just, it just is where it is. And sometimes it might even be as small as, I'm going to take this job because it just is where it is. Or, in fact, I'm going to decide that I'm going to start this business because it just is where it is. Sometimes we see these things as small things like, it's not a big deal. It's just me right here, right now. But how do you not know that you taking or not taking a particular job could actually allow you to connect with the next person that could actually bring riches or wealth into your family for generations to come? And that's why it's so important for us to be sure that we align ourselves with whatever it is that God is calling us for. That we allow ourselves to say no, even when sometimes we want to say yes. Even sometimes when we are desperate and we are in desperate need, and our desperation is allowing us to make decisions on our behalf. Even in those moments, sometimes you have to learn how to say no. Because it might not be the thing for you. And one of the things that I realized about all of these things, and I realized about being able to sacrifice the immediate yes in order for the long-term yes and the long-term gain, is that it really is a test of your character and your integrity. That's one thing I really, really realized. Because in that moment, Abraham could have easily backtracked, backpedaled, forgot all about integrity, forgot all about his character, forgot about everything that he'd ever learned over those many, many years that he was living, and decided, you know what, in this moment, this feels right. He's offering me something. He's a king. Why don't I take it? But it was a reflection of his integrity. It was a reflection of the fact that his character had been developed enough, built enough in order for him to resist. Have you built your character? Have you taken the time to intentionally work on your character? You go to work, you work for somebody, you do 9 to 5, or you do whatever it is. You work for somebody, you pay the tax man, you do whatever is necessary. But when was the last time you sat down and you worked on your character? You actually said, you know what, my character needs refining. I need to develop certain areas of myself that I know that even if someone was to present me a massive deal for my business, I probably wouldn't have even be able to handle that. Why? Because my character doesn't align with the type of person that needs to be in that position. Sometimes you think you need that thing right now, or you think that that thing has come to meet you right now, but really and truly, you can't even accept it. Why? Because you haven't developed the things on the inside of you yet to even sustain those things. So as I was going along, I was looking at the character of Abraham, his integrity, the fact that he constantly was put in sticky situations, but he constantly had God at the foundation. He constantly had God as the forefront. He constantly went back to say, no, I'm going to honor God in every way. I'm going to allow everything that I ever said to God, every oath that I made, every promise that I made, everything that I ever vowed to God, I'm going to make sure it means something. Because remember, the promises that we make to God, they might mean something in that moment, but the moment that you decide to backtrack, they mean nothing. You might have made a promise once upon a time that you said, do you know what, again, we'll go back to the whole, because boy, I've done it. I'm talking to myself also, I've done it. Where I've been like, God, please, if you just get me out of this sticky situation, please, Lord, I promise you, It meant something in that moment. But guess what? Years later, it means nothing. But he had integrity about an oath, a promise that he made, a covenant. And sometimes we forget about the weight of the covenant, the weight and the responsibility of that covenant, of that oath, of that promise. And sometimes that is dependent on position. And again, this is something that even myself, I'm speaking to so clearly. And I was having a conversation with Courtney this morning, and we were just talking in general, and this rang in my spirit so hard as well. Sometimes we really do forget about the weight and the responsibility that then comes with that oath, that comes with that agreement, that comes with that covenant. Back in the day, I'm sure people would tell us, and even me myself, I've seen this change, where back in the day, when someone promised you something, it meant something. Nowadays, people will promise you anything and everything, and yet they'll be the first people to be like, oh, did I say that? Did I really promise you that? Oh, nah, you know, sis, it was just, you know, it was just, yeah, whatever. Covenants meant something once upon a time. They had authority. Even when you read in the Bible, there are occasions in the Bible where people made covenants to one another about land that they could own. That was enough to say, literally a covenant just between two people. No contracts, no sign on the dotted line, just me and you, head to head. We are saying this, X, Y, and Z before the eyes of God, and that meant something. Nowadays, people will blaspheme and lie before the eyes of God, and yet they'll walk around like it's nothing. Where did the respect for the covenant go? Where did the respect for the responsibility and the authority and the weight of which we carry when we say yes, especially when we say yes to God? Where did that go? Where did all of that go? But anyway, I'm digressing. As I was talking, I was saying that the one thing that understanding, sacrificing no for a later yes, one thing that it reflects is integrity and character. It's the character that allows you to truly meet success. It's your character that truly allows you to meet success. And God really, really does go hard on character. If we look at any of the big giants in the Bible, while they might have been tested in so many physical ways and in so many different things that they were doing around them, the main way that they were tested was by their character. God always wanted to know, where is your heart? Where's your heart? What's the posture of your heart? Because that one you can't hide from me. You can maybe hide it from the world, but you can't hide from me. And someone that he particularly, tested the character of was Noah. So if we go back just a little bit, as I said, I've been in the book of Genesis and looking at Noah and the great flood and just all these different things happening. Oh, bless you. Bless you. What a sneeze. That was a cute sneeze. I love it. One of the people's character that he really, really had to test was Noah. Noah was a man that, yes, he was righteous. Yes, he found, favor before God. But just imagine, and I know we hear this story all the time. We're like, yeah, Noah, the great flood. Yeah, the animals going 2 by 2. Yeah, great. But actually, let's just take a moment to actually go back to basics and think about the story that we were told when we were young. This is a man in a world where everyone around was sinning. Everyone was blaspheming. Everyone was sleeping with whoever they wanted to sleep with, did whatever it is that they wanted to be, ratchet in so many different ways, probably even more than now. Noah, one man, saying that a great flood is coming to wipe out the earth. People looking at him like he is crazy. Don't you think that's a test of character? For you to be able to trust in God, even when everybody else around is looking at you like, what the hell are you talking about? This man is over there. He's building a what? An ark? He's building an ark in the middle of nowhere. Who knows? It might have even been sunshine. Imagine somewhere like, I even like to think of it somewhere like, where there's not sun, like Dubai. Imagine being in Dubai. Imagine being in Dubai and you start building an ark in the middle of Dubai. And people are looking at you like, what on earth is this man doing? But yet he builds it anyway. And he honors the covenant. He honors the word. He puts value on it. And he sacrifices what he might think is right. He sacrifices what he might think is normal or what everyone else will think of him. He sacrifices all of that. And he says, you know what? Even if it's just me and God alone, I'm going to have to do that. When was the last time you were willing to be the one out of the 1,000? When was the last time you allowed yourself to step out, even when everyone was going in one flow? When was the last time you said, you know what, I'm not going to do things like everybody else. I'm not going to do things like the world is doing it. The world is on Instagram twerking and shaking and doing their shaking and nyash. I ain't judging you. Listen, if you want to twerk and shake and do whatever you want to do. That's between you and God. But when was the last time you decided that, do you know what, actually, I'm going to do things a little bit differently? I'm not going to allow the ways of this world to sway me. I'm not going to allow the things that I've seen around to consume me. I'm not going to be obsessed with every trend that is online and everything that is happening on the online world or everything that's happening around me or the way that even my parents and our families had told us that we should do and the things that we should do and the expectations that they had of us. When was the last time you said, you know what? I am going to be the one out of the 1,000. And even if it means having to be on my own as a lone ranger on my own island by myself, not quite knowing how I'm going to get through it on my own, being isolated, being cussed out, being looked down upon, being looked at as the weirdo, the strange one, the person on the side, the person that has no friends. When was the last time you said, you know what, it is okay for me to be in this season by myself? When was the last time you said, I'm going to be in the wilderness on my own? When Jesus was his most powerful, guess what? He went out into the wilderness on his own for 40 days and 40 nights. He came back. And when he came back, the work that he did, the miracles that he conducted, not that he wasn't powerful before, but there is something powerful about just standing on your own for a little while. There's something powerful about being able to go through the wilderness, going through the most difficult seasons, the most difficult situation. There's something powerful about going through that isolating time in your life, but being able to come out of it knowing that you've been restored nonetheless. And oftentimes that's what God is calling us to. You're so afraid, he's calling you into the wilderness, but you're too afraid to even step into it. You're afraid, you're trying to run away from the wilderness, but God is like, listen, this is where I'm going to make you most powerful. It's in the wilderness that I'm going to build you. It's in the wilderness that I'm going to allow you to grow. It's in the wilderness that I'm going to allow you to become the person, the man, the woman that I need you to be for this next season. It's in the wilderness that I'm going to build your character. But you're running in the other direction because you're afraid of the wilderness. Because everything you ever heard about the wilderness was always negative, was always bad, was always the wilderness is not for you. The wilderness is something to be afraid of. But what if it's in the wilderness that God wants you to grow? It's in the wilderness that God wants you to find yourself.